I never forgot that feeling, standing in the middle of my own family yet feeling like an outsider. I was only 8 then, my fingers still sticky with glue from the homemade volcano I built for the science fair, while my mom turned away to grab a picture frame to hang up a photo of my little sister, Lana, in her pink ballet dress. Lana looked so graceful on stage, like an angel, Mom said, beaming at Dad. Me. I had just won first place at the district elementary school science competition, an achievement my teacher said was extremely rare. The only thing I got from my parents was a distracted nod and a quick comment from Dad as he checked his email. Yeah, good job, Arya. I stood there, clutching my certificate and the volcano model that was starting to chip paint, my heart pounding, not with pride but with disappointment. Lana had only been taking ballet for 2 weeks, danced out of sync from the 3rd row, but her picture was placed right at the center of the fridge, where every guest would see it first. My certificate? Stuffed behind the microwave manual in the kitchen drawer. I was the oldest, the independent one, as Mom liked to tell people. She's older now, doesn't need much. Arya can handle herself. Every time I heard that, I wanted to scream. I didn't want to handle everything alone. I just wanted someone to care, even a little. But in my house, attention always belonged to Lana. My sister was 4 years younger, and since the day she was born, she had been a pastel storm, bright, magnetic, and sparkling. Every family photo revolved around her. Birthdays, holidays, music recitals. I was often cropped out or stood off to the side, holding a plate of cake no one offered me. My dad, David, was a senior manager at a finance firm in Houston. Strict, quiet, and firm in his belief that success required discipline. Somehow that discipline only applied to me. If Lana woke up late, skipped breakfast, forgot homework, he'd chuckle, she's still young. If I missed a math assignment? This can't happen, Arya. You can't afford to fail like that. My mom, Julia, worked in radio broadcasting. She loved elegance, admired grace, and proudly claimed that Lana had inherited her gift for charm and taste. Me. I hid in corners reading or tinkered with odd inventions like a mini ice cream machine or a toy car-converted electric scooter. Mom called them quirky little hobbies. I remember when I was 13, I won a statewide writing contest in Texas with an essay about silence in a crowded family. My teachers called home to say I'd be honored in Austin. Mom answered the phone, then turned to Dad and said, Arya wrote something again. Do you think you'll be free to drive her this weekend? Dad glanced at his phone and said flatly, No. Lana has dress rehearsal on Saturday. It's her first solo performance. So I didn't go. The school mailed my award, a beautiful certificate embossed with gold. I hung it in my room above my desk. A week later, Mom took it down to put up a poster for Lana's recital. Let's make room for Lana. She needs the motivation. I've lost count of how many times I was pushed aside. But I remember how it felt, like a sharp sting each time I tried to speak and was interrupted because Lana needed to try on a dress, or she was singing, or she made a new friend. One summer, I earned a full scholarship to a 2-week STEM program at MIT. There was only one spot in the entire school, and I got it. Just as I received the invitation letter, Mom called me downstairs to help install a new sunshade for the kiddie pool she'd bought for Lana to help her relax. I held out the letter, excited. Mom, I got into a summer program at MIT. It's a full ride. She glanced at it and asked, What's MIT again? Is it far? I haven't figured out who can drive you. Besides, Lana has art class this summer. We need to focus on her. That letter was never answered. I hid it under my pillow for a few nights, then tore it up during a heavy rain. Back then, I thought maybe if I studied harder, won bigger prizes, or became famous, they'd finally see me. But over the years, I began to realize, it wasn't that I wasn't enough. It's that in their eyes, I was never meant to be center stage. I spent my entire childhood like that, a silent shadow trailing behind Lana's spotlight. I kept thinking if I just kept trying, they'd notice I had worth too. I was wrong. So wrong. And it wasn't until I stood on a stage with thousands listening that I finally found the courage to speak up for myself. I started writing every night after school when the whole house had gone to sleep, under the dim desk lamp, wrestling with every word. Fictional stories, unsent diary entries, all poured into a battered green notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. Writing was the only thing that made me feel heard, even if it was just by me. No one at home cared that I loved writing. Mom said it was childish. Dad said, Writing doesn't pay bills, Arya. Focus on something practical. I nodded politely, then quietly submitted a story to the state teen writing competition. That year's theme was Things No One Sees. It took me 3 weeks and 13 rewrites. The final draft was a short story about a girl overlooked by her family, always trying to be seen. No one knew it was me. 2 months later, I got an email saying I'd won second place, and my piece would be published in this year's anthology. I nearly screamed in class and had to hide in the restroom to keep from crying. After school, I came home floating with hope. Maybe things would be different. I shared the news at dinner, just after Lana had finished chatting about a classmate's birthday party, which Mom had already booked at a fancy Italian restaurant. "Mom, Dad, I won second place in the state writing contest," I said, trying to stay calm. "My story's going to be published. They invited me to Boston for the launch event." Dad didn't look up from his phone. "When is it?" "Next weekend. It's the same day as Chloe's birthday party, but..." "Then no," Mom cut in, still slicing apples for Lana. "You know, I booked that restaurant a month ago. The whole family's going. Lana can't go alone." I froze. "But I'd be going with my English teacher. The school is covering most of the cost. I just need your permission slip." Dad glanced up and shrugged. "For a story? It's not like it's a top university or a scholarship. Doesn't seem worth it." No one asked what my story was about or how hard I worked. As I walked away from the table, my heart felt just as cold as the untouched bread roll on my plate. The next morning, I called Ms. Mathis, my high school English teacher, my voice hoarse from a sleepless night. "I'm sorry, ma'am. My parents won't let me go." There was a soft sigh on the other end, but she didn't scold me. "Aria, you have such a unique voice. If you can't come to Boston, at least keep writing. You don't need anyone's permission to do what you love." I didn't reply. But that night I wrote again. This time about a bird with a broken wing who couldn't fly, but still looked up at the sky. That summer when I was 16, I was selected for an advanced writing program at Columbia University. Only 12 students across the country were invited. The school covered most of the costs, and all I needed was my parents' consent. I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Everything I had ever worked toward felt like it led to that moment. I printed the invitation letter, slipped it under my writing notebook, and placed it on the dinner table. "Columbia," my dad said, glancing over it before setting it down. "All the way in New York. That's dangerous." "I'd be staying in a supervised dorm," I explained. "It's only 3 weeks long." My mom gave a dry chuckle. 3 weeks. Your sister needs someone to take her to summer classes, and I'm swamped with a new media campaign. Who's going to handle things at home? You can't expect someone else to take over." I swallowed hard. "I can take a Greyhound, travel on my own. I already mapped it all out." "Aria, why do you always have to complicate everything?" my mom frowned. "We already have the Lake Tahoe trip with Aunt Ruby's family scheduled for that time. You can't miss it." "But I don't even know them well." "Doesn't matter. They're family." I didn't go to New York. I stayed home, packed Lana's summer bags, watched over the stove while Mom joined video calls, and sat quietly on the grass in Lake Tahoe listening to adults chit-chat while story ideas swirled in my head, unspoken and unwritten. I kept thinking maybe if I sacrificed just a little more, pushed just a bit harder, they'd finally see me differently. But the only thing that changed was my slow erosion of belief that I could ever be loved unconditionally. Then one day, I submitted a handwritten essay to a writing contest organized by Ms. Mathis for former students. The theme was the unspoken words. I wrote nonstop for 3 hours, didn't lift my pen once. I sent it in and forgot all about it. A week later, she called me. Her voice cracked, then broke into tears over the phone. "Aria, you won. First place. Your piece." It left the entire judging panel speechless. I said nothing. "People need to hear your story. Do you realize you have the power to change someone's life with your words?" In that moment, for the first time, I felt something unfamiliar. Maybe I didn't need my parents' approval to believe I had worth. I sat by the window in my room, sunlight filtering through sheer curtains. Under my mattress was the frayed green notebook, filled with hundreds of pages no one had ever read. I placed a hand over my chest, feeling my heart beat, steady, patient, like a knock from someone waiting to be heard. I thought, maybe it's time to open the door. I left Texas on a sweltering August morning, leaving behind familiar streets, silent dinners, and a bedroom where my voice had always been swallowed by silence. The train departed at 7:30 a.m., carrying me to Illinois, where I had been accepted to Evanmore University, nearly 250 miles from home. My mom saw me off at the station, but during the entire ride she said only one thing: "Don't do anything that would embarrass us." I didn't look back when the train pulled away. The dorm was in a red brick building near the main library. My room was on the 3rd floor, window facing the quad where students tossed frisbees or read in the grass. My roommate was Natalie, light brown curls, round glasses, and a habit of color-coding everything. On move-in day she saw me fumbling with my bags and extended a hand. "Welcome to freedom, comrade." I laughed. For the first time, someone called this stage freedom instead of responsibility. We bonded quickly, not because we had the same backstory but because Natalie never tried to invade my space, yet she never left me feeling alone unless I wanted to be. She always invited me to breakfast, left me a slice of pastry if I overslept, and gently nudged a hot cup of tea toward me when I slumped at my desk. She never asked why I wrote so much or why I avoided calls from mom flashing on my phone screen. She was simply there, like the quiet support I had never known at home. In the 3rd week, I enrolled in modern American literature, one of my first electives. The professor, dear Stein, was a bald man with a sleepy voice and a strange obsession with Hemingway. Next to me sat a guy with faint stubble, a plaid shirt, and worn leather shoes. He borrowed my pen and after class asked, "Do you like John Steinbeck?" I nodded without speaking. "I love Of Mice and Men." It leaves you feeling empty in this weird way, like staring straight into the things people usually try to avoid. We walked out of the lecture hall together talking about short stories, bitter coffee, and how the characters left behind are often the strongest ones. His name was Micah, a 3rd-year philosophy major who worked part-time at a local bookstore. A week later he took me to a dusty little coffee shop on 11th Street. No Wi-Fi, just warm yellow lights, creaky wooden chairs, and a small book exchange shelf. I sat with a steaming espresso while he read Sylvia Plath poems to me in a low, raspy voice. "Aria," he said, eyes still on the page, "have you noticed how you lower your head whenever you talk about yourself? Like you're apologizing for existing." I looked up. Because if I'm not good enough, I'll be ignored. No one should have to earn visibility by being perfect. That sentence stayed with me for a long time. In the weeks that followed, I wrote more. No longer angry rants or secret journal entries, but short stories, personal essays, even my first poem I dared submit to the Student Literary Journal. When they published it, I didn't call home to tell my parents. Not out of spite, but because I no longer needed validation from people who had never read a single thing I wrote. Natalie threw a little poetry party in our dorm, laying out blankets, stringing up fairy lights, and asking everyone to bring a favorite passage. Micah brought homemade pastries and leaned in to whisper as everyone laughed around us. "Have you started believing in your own worth yet?" I didn't answer. But that night, I dreamed of a different version of myself, no longer curled in someone's shadow, but standing in the center of the campus, manuscript in hand, smiling. Slowly, I began to understand that some people don't require you to be exceptional to deserve their care. Natalie never asked about my GPA. Micah never demanded stories of my past to offer kindness. They simply showed up, valuing who I was, not who I could impress. I still studied hard. Still took detailed notes. Still trembled a bit when I got my tests back. But now, every A wasn't a plea for existence. It was mine to be proud of, whether anyone noticed or not. One autumn class, Dr. Stein asked us to write an essay on the person who changed how you see yourself. I turned it in on time like always. But unlike every paper before, this one wasn't about a famous writer. It wasn't about a literary character. I wrote about Natalie, the friend who showed me that care doesn't have to come with conditions. I wrote about Micah, the first person who said my name without attaching it to expectations. And I wrote about myself, the girl who once lived in silence, now learning to speak without needing to shout to be heard. Beneath my essay, Professor Stein wrote, "Aria, your voice has found its heart. Never lose it." I wasn't sure I had fully escaped the shadow I once lived under. But at the very least, I was walking, step by step, away from what once made me believe silence was the safest place. I got the email that Monday afternoon. The subject line was simple. "Congratulations, Aria. You're this year's valedictorian. I read it over and over, my mind blank for a few seconds like someone had just paused the world. After years of scraping for grades, clinging to scholarships, balancing writing with dry gen ed courses, finally I was at the top of my class. I didn't cry. I just sat still, hand clenched around the mouse, heart full of tangled feelings. Relief, disbelief, and a fragile hope. Hope that maybe my parents would be proud. I called my mom. She picked up on the sixth ring, pop music blaring in the background. Sweetie, what's up? Oh, I'm taking Lana to a dress fitting for the brand launch. It's been crazy running around all day. I tried to keep my voice calm. Mom, I was just named valedictorian. I'll be giving the speech at next month's graduation. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. Oh, congrats, honey. But remind me, valedictorian means top grades or something. That's nice. But guess what? Lana just got invited to model by a stylist from Harper Lane. Just yesterday. I heard a glass door open, wind rushing through. Mom had stepped outside, rummaging in her purse while talking. I said 2 short sentences, the date and location, then hung up before she could shift the conversation back to the party she was planning for my sister. 3 days later, I went home over the weekend to hand-deliver the invitations. I had spent the entire evening writing each line in brown ink, using the old calligraphy pen Micah had given me for my birthday. Each card was unique, not printed, not templated, just the way I wanted to mark the one time I'd stand on a stage in honor. I handed a card to my dad while he was typing on his laptop on the couch, eyes glued to the screen. You drew these. Looks nice. But why not mail it? Seems like a lot of effort just to drop this off. I didn't answer. Mom called from the kitchen. Thanks, sweetie. I'll check the calendar. We've both been so busy lately. If we can make it, we'll definitely come. I held back a sigh. As I left, I turned back to confirm one more time. The ceremony's on the 18th, Saturday at 11 a.m. You'll be there, right? Dad nodded without looking up. Yeah, I marked it. On the way back to campus, I stared out the window, sunlight sliding over dusty billboards. Inside me was a quiet space I couldn't name. Not pain exactly, but not excitement either. I poured my heart into the speech. I didn't want the usual cliches like, bright futures, or, thank you for the memories. I wrote about the biggest thing I had learned in 4 years. How to stand when no one stands beside you. I printed 3 copies. One for editing, one as backup, and one to bring to rehearsal. Daniels, the graduation coordinator, read it and nodded with bright eyes. Aria, it's like every word you wrote is breathing. I gave a small smile. Thanks. I just wrote what I used to swallow. 3 days before the ceremony, I was having dinner with Natalie at a ramen shop near the dorm when I got a call from Dad. Aria, about the graduation, your mom and I talked. She's been tired lately and there are a couple of urgent meetings, so it might not be the best time to come. The drive's a bit far too. I set down my chopsticks, mouth suddenly dry. You mean you're not coming? Well, it's not that we don't want to, it's just the schedule's packed. You'll send us pictures, right? I didn't reply. In the background, I heard Mom say, tell her to send the live stream link. Dad said something else, but I had already pulled the phone from my ear. Natalie looked at me. She didn't need to ask. She gently touched my hand and whispered, they don't deserve the space you saved for them. I left the restaurant without a word. That night, I sat at my laptop, staring at the screen where the speech still sat, titled Beyond Expectations. I selected all, hit delete. I started over. This time not to impress, not to make anyone regret. I wrote like I was untying every rope that had bound me since childhood. I wrote about the kid who once hid a scholarship letter under her pillow because she knew it would be dismissed. About nods that replaced proud smiles. About standing in a crowd and still feeling invisible. I wrote until dawn, eyes blurry, heart pounding, but no longer clenched. I woke up Friday morning with a heavy chest, like the nap hadn't soothed the disappointment, only folded it neater to bury deeper. My phone lit up with messages, graduation wishes from classmates, even a few I barely spoke to. I stayed under the blanket, didn't reply. The rewritten speech still sat on my desk beside a cold coffee. I hadn't printed it. Something was still stuck inside me, some truth not yet uncovered. It hit me only when I opened Instagram. The first story was from Lana's account. First photo, Mom in a white dress with a silk scarf, smiling beside a jacuzzi. Dad behind her holding a glass of wine. Lana in the middle, mocktail raised, captioned, "Family Spa Day. Much needed." I paused. Blinked fast, hoping I was seeing things. But no, there were 8 more pictures. Third photo. Mom and Lana getting foot massages at La Vella Spa. Famous downtown, just 15 minutes from home. Sixth photo. Dinner at a French restaurant, candlelight glowing, caption, "Girls' night out with my favorites." Last photo, posted at 11:52 p.m. Dad raising a glass of red wine, Lana's hand on his shoulder, Mom hugging her daughter tightly. I felt my scalp tighten as if every strand of hair was holding on just to keep me conscious. Too exhausted to come. That was the reason they gave me. That after a month of being busy, they didn't have the energy to sit in a car for a few hours to attend their eldest daughter's graduation. The one who had just been named valedictorian, the one who once gave up a scholarship in New York to fit the family's vacation schedule. I took screenshots of every photo, my fingers trembling. Sent them all to Natalie without a single word. She replied within 2 minutes, "They knew you'd see those pics. This isn't a slip. It's a message." My heart pounded, not from anger but from emptiness. Something inside me cracked without making a sound. I texted Lana. "Thanks for the pictures. I'm sure Mom was just too tired to come, right?" It took her nearly 30 minutes to reply, "Don't blow things out of proportion. Not everyone thinks school stuff is as big of a deal as you do." School stuff. 4 years of draining myself, 3 years of keeping my GPA nearly perfect, a speech that made my professor stand and applaud, called school stuff. I put my phone down on the bed, then picked it back up. I tapped on Grandma's number, the only one in the family who never forgot my birthday. She answered quickly. Her voice trembled slightly, but it was still warm. "Arya, I sent a congratulatory email. Did you get it? I wish I could come, but this darn leg won't let me. I'll be watching the live stream though." I tried to keep my tone even. "I know. You're the only one who's asked if I'm nervous." She chuckled softly. "Oh, I called your mom yesterday morning, asked what time they were heading out. She said they'd have to cut the spa short to make it in time for their dinner reservation at Maison Blanc. Your dad booked the table last week. He said they've got a new foie gras dish." There was no room left for pretending. "Grandma, what did you say?" "Well, didn't you already know?" "Oh dear," I slipped. "It's okay, Grandma. I understand now." I ended the call as gently as I could, like if I pressed too hard I might collapse right there. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the face that had grown thinner from sleepless nights. I didn't feel anything, not anger, not sadness, just a coldness spreading from my chest outward. I opened my speech draft again. Didn't touch a single word I had written. I only added one final paragraph. No edits, no justifications. Then I printed it. One copy. Tomorrow I'd read it. Not so others would look at me differently, but so I wouldn't have to lower my gaze when speaking about myself anymore. That morning, the sky was an absurd blue, as if the universe itself was mocking me with a kind of perfection I'd never received from my own family. While other students posed with their parents, adjusting their gowns, I sat on a bench near the auditorium, eyes scanning each person walking toward the stage area. The 3 seats in the front left row remained empty, the ones I had reserved just for them. I expected nothing else. Still, something caught in my throat, like a reflex not yet unlearned. Natalie walked up holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one. "You still have 9 minutes to change your mind." I took the cup, said nothing. Daniels asked again, "Are you sure about reading the new version?" She said the old one was approved, but this one hasn't been reviewed. She read it. She cried. I smiled, but my eyes stung. Micah showed up right after that. No flowers, no gift. Just a brown leather-wrapped fountain pen. He placed it in my hand so lightly it made my chest ache. "If you're going to write your name into someone's life," he said, "you'd better use ink that doesn't fade." I gripped the pen tighter. Didn't respond. I didn't need to. 30 minutes later, I stepped onto the stage to a wave of applause. Under the sunlight, my black gown felt as heavy as lead. I placed 2 papers on the podium. One was the approved version, the other the truth. I didn't look at the crowd. I looked straight into the livestream camera, knowing someone somewhere might be watching. Not to shame them, but so they couldn't say, "We had no idea." I took a deep breath. Faculty, friends, and everyone here today. When we arrived at this school 4 years ago, we all came carrying something. Some of us came with hopes. Some came to escape. I was in the second group. I once believed that if I earned high enough grades, won enough awards, or topped enough lists, it would be enough for my loved ones to finally see me. But some kinds of recognition only go to those on the approved list, and I wasn't on it. The sound beneath the stage began to quiet. I didn't stop. I don't say this to complain. I say it because some of you sitting here know what it's like to pat your own back after a win because no one else ever did. Some of us crossed this finish line with no one waiting to cheer. But that doesn't make your victory any smaller. I'm the valedictorian. But I'm also the one who was once denied a ride to an award ceremony because family plans were full. The one who, even after being chosen to give this speech, still got a message that said, "Just send us a picture." Last night, while the people who should have been here with me were raising their glasses at a French restaurant, I was sitting down to write this speech. Not to shame anyone, but to finally say to myself, "You are enough, Arya. You don't need another proof to be heard. You don't need another perfect grade to matter." The wind brushed across the mic. I saw Micah nod slowly from the fourth row. Natalie covered her mouth, her eyes red. I say this for those who've ever been left behind, even when your accomplishments should have brought you forward. For those who've been compared, overshadowed, ignored. For myself, who once thought staying silent was the only way to keep peace. Today I'm not silent anymore. I paused for a few seconds. The space below seemed frozen. Those 3 empty seats on the left. I saved them for my parents and my sister. They didn't come. They had their own reasons: spa, wine night, personal plans. I don't blame them anymore. Because I don't need their presence to stand tall. As I stepped off the podium, a few scattered claps echoed. Then they grew louder, spreading like a wave. A few students rose to their feet. I didn't look around. I looked toward the light behind the lens. That evening, Natalie uploaded the video of my speech to the student network. Less than 3 hours later, I received over 200 messages from strangers. "You said what I never dared to. I broke down when you mentioned the empty seats. I've never dared to speak up, but you made me want to try." A verified account reposted the clip. "This isn't just a graduation speech. This is a declaration for those who've been silenced." That night I slept deeply. No dreams. No jolts awake. And when morning came, I didn't need to dig up old anger to start the day. I just made a cup of coffee and watched the sunlight slip through the window bars. Silence can be healing too, so long as it's no longer used to hide injustice. I had just gotten back to the dorm, hadn't even taken off my shoes when the phone rang shrilly. Dad flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it stopped, but 3 minutes later the text started flooding in. "Call me back immediately. This can't go public like that. We need to talk privately, not in front of everyone. You're tearing down the family's image." A little while later Mom called. I could hear her breathing hard, probably walking somewhere. "Arya, do you even realize what you've done? All the relatives are messaging me. Your speech video is all over Facebook. You're making us look like terrible people." I braced myself on my desk, my voice steady. "I just told the truth. You could have talked to us privately. You didn't have to use the podium as a weapon against your own family. Since when is sharing personal feelings considered an attack?" I heard her exhale sharply, the sound crisp through the line. "Come home and talk to us. Today. No more phone arguments." I ended the call without replying. 10 minutes later there was a knock on the door. I opened it. It was Abby. My sister stood there in a white jumpsuit, deep red lipstick, her eyes no longer gleaming with that usual pride. "Mom and Dad sent me to find you." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "So you're the messenger?" "No. I came on my own." I stepped aside so she could enter. The room was empty. Natalie was at the library. The air was thick, stretched tight like an overdrawn string. "You made Mom cry her eyes out." "I cried for years. No one cared to ask." Lana stayed quiet, her eyes scanning the room. A poster of the speech had been pinned to the wall by someone after the ceremony. I wasn't sure if it was a classmate or a stranger. "I didn't think you'd have the guts to say all that in public," she murmured. "I've got nothing left to protect." I walked over to the desk, opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. Copies I'd prepared months ago. Events schedules, student evaluations, awards. I had one. I laid them on the desk. I printed all these once, hoping to convince Mom to come with me to an award ceremony. She brushed them aside without reading. Said they needed to focus on getting you ready for your dance competition. I don't remember that. You don't need to. Everything always revolved around you. She bit her lip, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. Do you think I was happy being the center of everything? I looked at her. She wasn't the Instagram perfect girl anymore with thousands of likes. She was someone caught in the middle of expectations she didn't ask for. There were times I wanted to just stay home, but Mom would drag me out, saying, "You need to put yourself out there. Don't let Arya outshine you. I won't stand for people only talking about your sister." I sat down, leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly. So Mom was afraid I'd outshine you? Lana gave a slight nod. She never said it directly, but I could feel it. She wanted one child to shine in academics, the other in social life. I was shoved into a role I never chose. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Only the soft breeze through the cracked window filled the gap. Then why did you still hurt me? I asked, not bitter, just tired. You treated me like I didn't exist. Ignored me when I tried to reach out. Called graduation stuff school nonsense. Lana looked down. Because if I admitted you mattered, I'd have to admit I stood on top of abandonment. And that's more uncomfortable than I wanted to admit. I could hear the tremble in her voice. She didn't cry, but her clasped hands had turned pale. Why did you come here? She pulled a folded paper from her bag. It was a printout from social media. A photo of me at the podium, light pouring in from both sides, my face calm but firm. I used to think you were cold, only living for grades. Now I see you're the only one in this family brave enough to face everything. I didn't reply. We just sat there. Two people once pitted against each other, not by choice, but by roles handed to us before we even understood what stage we were on. Mom and Dad are furious, but they're also scared. Because neither of them thought you'd ever pull back the curtain like that in front of everyone. I let out a dry laugh. They should fear the truth, not the speech. Lana stepped closer, placing the paper on the desk. If you need me to speak up for what you went through, I will. I looked at her. Not to test her honesty, but to see how much of the girl I once wanted to be friends with was still there. I didn't see a rival. I saw another victim, just wearing a different face. I don't need a witness, I said. I need you not to look away when they start acting like nothing ever happened. Lana nodded. I understand. Then sit down. Let's eat something. We both deserve to be heard, even if only by each other. We shared the box of noodles Natalie had left on the table without saying much more. But in that silence, neither of us had to prove we deserved to exist anymore. 3 months after graduation, I stepped into New York on a gray morning full of honking. The city didn't greet me with flowers or banners, but with humidity that drained sleep and voices rushing nonstop. I rolled my suitcase into a temporary apartment in Brooklyn, cramped, old, but quiet and bright enough to write by each night. I started working at the Atlantic in the second week. My small desk sat by a window facing the avenue, sticky notes lining the monitor, and every morning, the first cup of coffee was handed to me by the receptionist named Clara, who always said, "You're gonna make it, I can see it." The work wasn't light. Deadlines chased me like traffic on the street below. But unlike in college, every news brief I edited, every essay I revised was met with eye contact and acknowledgement. No one asked what school I'd gone to, what grades I got, or, "Did your parents attend the ceremony?" One rainy afternoon, Micah called. I thought he wanted to check in, but all he said was, "Arya, you're standing tall now. I don't need to be your crutch anymore." I didn't reply. But after that call, I sat down and wrote for 3 straight hours. An essay I initially titled "The Kid Behind the Fridge." I submitted the draft to the senior editor at the end of the month. A week later, the piece appeared on the Atlantic's homepage under a new title. Invisible Daughter, When Empty Chairs Speak Up. The piece spread like a current long held back. My inbox overflowed with emails titled, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I thought I was the only one." I read your piece out loud to my mom. No one mentioned awards, no one asked what honors I graduated with. They saw the most honest part of me. Someone who had once been ignored, learning how to stop screaming just to be seen. In mid-October, I started therapy, Natalie's suggestion. My therapist was Linda, around 50 with graying hair, often wearing muted cardigans and always steeping oolong tea before our sessions. Arya, have you noticed you never use the word angry when describing your parents? She asked. I looked down at my fingers twisted together. Because I think if I'm angry, I'll be a bad person. But if I endure it, at least I'm still a good daughter. Linda only nodded, no conclusions. But her gaze told me what I needed to learn. Sometimes the kindest people must also learn to be angry at the right time in order to live truthfully. I learned how to decline calls that came at the wrong time. I replied to my mom's messages with, "Thank you for sharing," instead of, "Yes, I'm sorry for not updating you earlier." I ignored last-minute dinner invites with a calm, "You had a table set for 3 but didn't think to include me." I kept my boundaries, not to shut anyone out but to redefine myself outside of being someone's daughter. Lana moved to New York in early November. She got a job at a small fashion label in Soho, and lived on her own without mom choosing her curtains or pillow colors. "I don't know how to make coffee," she texted. "Can I come over to learn?" I welcomed her with 2 oat milk lattes and a jar of honey. We met once a week, no forced effort. Sometimes just to sit silently beside each other, watch an old movie, or debate whether waffles should be crispy or soft. No one brought up the past. But with each gesture we were rewriting how to be sisters without having to play a role. One Sunday, Lana brought me a cream-colored envelope. No sender listed. "From Dad," she said, placing it on the table. He didn't say anything else. I opened it after she left. Blue ink, slanted handwriting leaning right. Exactly how Dad used to jot things on his desk calendar. "Arya, I don't know where to begin. Maybe with admitting that I used to feel uneasy every time you were praised. Not because you didn't deserve it, but because it reminded me of the things I once wanted and never had the courage to go after. I'm not saying I was right. But that day when I heard you speak about the 3 empty chairs, I realized silence doesn't help anyone anymore. If you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. Not to justify anything, but to start over without pretending. D." I folded the letter and placed it beside a photo of me at 6 years old, sitting under the backyard oak tree with a book. An image Mom once said was too blurry to print, but had shown up in a parcel yesterday with a handwritten note. "I found this in an old drawer. Maybe it's time you keep it." I didn't write back. I just stood up, made another cup of tea and returned to editing my new piece. About people learning they don't need a spotlight to know they shine. On the screen, the working title read, "Rebuilding a Family with Honest Words." Arya's story is proof that not everyone grows up in a home that listens. Some grow up in imposed silence, with empty chairs where unconditional love should have been. But Arya showed that you don't need anyone's permission to shine. Through the courage to tell the truth, she didn't just free herself from her family's shadow, she inspired thousands still struggling to reclaim their voices. What do you think about Arya's choices? Would you be brave enough to stand up for yourself in a family that doesn't understand you? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel to hear more powerful family stories.